God, this lighting is dramatic. Hey, how's everyone doing today? It's the extra fabulous Ashy, extra trashy Coyote, the one and only Ash Coyote. Ever since I made this video with Crash Azrael over here, I have seen a lot of debate and discussion on the topic. I've had this nagging question at the back of my head. What would really happen if brands started sponsoring cons here in the US or the UK? And in some of my discussions with my good friend Vex, we realized that this would be a good topic for my channel. She will be appearing a little later on in this video, just so you know. But first, my thoughts. Hey, I'm the chair of CoyoteCon and we're getting super popular! You guys are getting big, and you have a major influence over everyone. Would you like some free products to give away? Sure, everyone loves free stuff. Okay, great. But we just have a few requests to make sure our brand's reputation stays pristine. Oh, okay. Well, we need you to remove all artwork that doesn't adhere to our standards. But my attendees like that artwork. Oh, and we don't like cat fursuits, so could you just tell everyone with a cat fursuit that they can't attend? Whoa, hold on now. We have a lot of cat suitors that attend. I know, but if you do that, we will give you this. In communities like ours, we have a lot of diversity. The fandom is largely LGBT after all. Our identities are expressed outwardly through our art and performance. Things like fursuiting allow us the ability to really find ourselves in a more reflective form of performance. Now, you're probably wondering, Ash, why are you rambling on about art and fursuiting in a video about corporate sponsors in the community? Let me explain. While the norm might be a rather casual appearance of a suitor or a tame piece of art, there are also other forms of expression at play in our community. The pup community, for example, took a lot of heat recently because their representation in the public eye when associated with furry at large. While I'm not completely familiar with the pup community itself, I have friends that are a part of it and enjoy it for various reasons. A part of what makes our community so special is that it is a safe space for expression of different identities and interests like this. If a corporate sponsor came into the picture, there's always the potential that they might use that sponsorship as leverage because they don't want those people in our community. That'd be the greatest crime of all, to lose our individuality as a community. I know, it does kind of sound far-fetched, all things considered, but look at what happened to Pride over the years and other groups as well. They have been overrun by companies trying to capitalize on the idea without having a conscience and embodying the idea itself. We need to look at the whole picture. Going back to the example of pups, we need to understand that while there are elements of our community that folks might not completely understand, they are still a part of our community. Now, to help me expand on the topic more, we are shifting over to chat with the ultimate foxy himself, Chip, with Chip Chats. Alright, before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button, boop that bell, and subscribe if you aren't already.
Hey, welcome to Chip Chats. I'm Chip, and today we are going to talk about rainbow capitalism, and with me is Ash Coyote.
Hey, I'm Ash.
I noticed it picks up mouth sounds if I get too close.
ASMR.
Yeah. So from what I understand about rainbow capitalism is that it's a way for people to say they support LGBTs by advertising.
Rainbow capitalism can be a way for companies to intrude on our community. It certainly has been a thing more so as of late. As Pride has become more of a publicly visible and acceptable event in people's eyes, we see a lot of companies kind of jumping in and starting to advertise and promote products utilizing our Pride flags and stuff like that.
Right, so rainbow capitalism isn't any different from a company saying, hey, we make a product for women, so we're going to put women all over the ad, and even though it's identical to the men's product, we're using women to advertise it.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, I think the big problem with rainbow capitalism is that a lot of times the companies that are promoting their product or their company through our community, they might have kind of a double-edged agenda. Like, take Google, for example. Google consistently platforms, folks from the alt-right, folks who are anti-LGBT, and at the same time, they're running floats in Pride. I mean, I think that's kind of a problem, don't you?
Yeah, it's incredibly hypocritical because they say they support LGBTs, but at the same time, they donate money to anti-LGBT people, and anti-LGBT groups get advertising from them, free advertising many times. It's a little bit I don't know, disingenuous, I would say.
Well, beyond that, they get a platform.
Right, and they give platforms to people who consistently violate their terms of service, saying they can't bash a minority group. And yet they ignore that and fly pride floats and flags everywhere. It doesn't really make any sense. They're coming across as liars.
Yeah, so I mean, in that sense, rainbow capitalism is kind of a bad thing.
Right,
it's
ways. Just in name only, not in action. Like, they play lip service and say nice things to us, but it doesn't mean anything if they don't back it up with actions. And Google certainly doesn't back anything up.
So maybe, let's evolve this conversation a little bit. So, early on we kind of gave the definition. We talked a little bit about how it kind of fits into the schema of things. Let's kind of move into social responsibilities of companies that take on these sort of communities as potential consumers.
Okay, well, if they're going to say they support LGBTs, then they should be socially responsible enough not to pay for advertising on anti-LGBT shows. For example, if say Gillette advertised a show that is all about hating LGBTs, that's not responsible. So they would need to be socially responsible, support the LGBTs, maybe with donations, maybe supporting LGBTs through events, whatever it may be. They need to follow through.
That's even beyond the LGBT community now, looking at furry. Furry is kind of slowly falling onto the radar of companies at large, where people are looking at us as a potential market.
Oh yeah, so it does feel good to get recognized by the public. Like, oh wow, these big companies are suddenly recognizing furries or LGBTs or whatever your group may be. It feels good to get noticed. It does. And sometimes that's not a problem. A company may want to advertise their energy drink, and they'll just give you bunches of free energy drinks at a convention. That's not really a big deal, I would say, unless they start making demands on your behalf, saying, oh, well, we want you to do this for us if you want our free energy drinks.
Yeah, well, exactly. Take, for example, the video I did covering Converse down in Brazil. So we need to kind of examine what that company is doing for us, how that affects us, and where that, where the line is drawn.
I would say Converse hasn't really done anything to the fandom, really, except use our image. And some people are opposed to using the fandom at all for advertising, but they haven't made any demands of us. They haven't insisted that furries change, which is good, because we don't want to change for corporations.
I don't think we should ever change for corporations. I think we would lose what makes us special. If we started changing for corporations, what's next?
Yeah, so I don't know. Me personally, I don't care if they want to give us free stuff with no strings attached. If they do start attaching those strings and saying we can't do certain things, then we don't need them. We do just fine without corporations sponsoring us now. We have plenty of furry businesses that we can support instead. I'd rather see people support small furry businesses. Big corporations don't seem to help us that much anyway. I'd rather that go to furry companies.
Well, on that note, we are an artisan culture. And a lot of the products that we produce and consume are consumed within our own community. We have t-shirt manufacturers, all sorts of clothing garments. We make fursuits, obviously. We make our own art. We have sculptures and all sorts of fun, little design elements that you can put up through your house. I'd be hard-pressed to find something that the community doesn't already offer itself.
We even have a friend who makes her own energy drinks.
That's true. She does.
And so that's really cool.
Though technically she can't sell them.
Right. Technically you can't sell that at a convention because that violates the rules of selling food and beverage. But yeah. See, I would hate it if a big company came in and started selling furry t-shirts and put all the other small furry t-shirt businesses out of business. Because the small furry t-shirt businesses are super cool. They're made by unique artists from the fandom itself. And if some big corporation came in and said, oh, we're going to undercut all the prices for the smaller makers, that would be really unfortunate. We'd lose a lot of creative people.
That's absolutely true. I was actually just thinking, there is kind of another funny element here. I'm sure you remember when we first met, and even before we met, this was kind of a thing in the fandom where people would like collect furry commercials and like furry media and multimedia and stuff, and just, you know, like this was kind of like one of those fun little moments where you're like, oh, they have an anthro character, you know, like Foxy Bingo or the polar bear from Coca-Cola, you know, something like that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it goes along with representation feeling good. You can see yourself in all of these advertisements, even if it doesn't really support you or your community. It's great seeing that stuff just because it feels like, hey, someone kind of knows what I enjoy. But then again, like it adds nothing to the fandom at all. It's just kind of fun to look at.
Well, I mean, there is that sexy cougar man.
The Orangina cougar?
Yeah.
Oh my.
That adds something to the fandom. I'm sure it added a few people to the fandom.
It certainly added some memes.
At the very least, memes, yes. I will never forget that, and like the weird Foxy Bingo, you know, like the...
Yeah, parading around with old ladies.
Yeah, to a song from Greece, no less? Like,
yeah.
Like, what's going on there? Why is this a thing?
Isn't that funny?
It's so silly.
I think it's funny.
It.
I don't think it contributes anything to the fandom except something to look at and laugh at. So, I don't know. I don't have a problem with it. I don't think it's truly furry either, because furries didn't create it. I mean, maybe there is some secret furry advertising agency. I'm not sure.
I mean,
That'd
maybe.
be cool.
I think we do know one, at least.
Oh my. Maybe a Coyote, perhaps?
Oh, jeez. Well, then maybe two. Who knows? Yeah, so I think the real takeaway from this conversation is that basically when it comes to rainbow capitalism and a lot of the other things that go on within our own community, the furry community, we need to be wary, but also be open-minded. If it's just handing out free stuff, handing out a free energy drink or t-shirt or something like that, that might not be a big deal. If it's changing our ideals as a community, if it's excluding individuals of our community to take in money or advertising or something like that, that's where we really need to kind of draw that line and say, no, this isn't a thing that we want to do. Anyways, I'm Ash Coyote.
And I'm Chip Fox.
And that pretty much does it for this segment. Oh my god, that was such a delightful little chat with my Foxy. Isn't he dreamy? I may have a little bit of a Fox addiction. Okay, so moving on to our next segment, it is my pleasure to introduce Vex the Werewolf. She is a friend of mine that I met only just recently at Anthrocon this year and is just a super sweetheart. In addition to being a werewolf on occasion, she is also a trans rights activist in the UK. So without further ado, here's Vex.
Rawr! Hi, I'm Vex. I'm a werewolf. I'm from London. I guess you could say that the agenda of most corporations is they want to make money. That's pretty much it. They want to make money. And there are many ways that you can go about doing this. And the problem is that more often than not, the way corporations do it is ethically questionable. I think if you want to understand corporations, we kind of need to ask the question, who runs a corporation? And most people are going to say the CEO, or possibly the board of directors. And that's kind of true from a sort of day-to-day perspective. If people are making decisions, it's going to be the board of directors and the CEO. But the board of directors and the CEO are appointed by the shareholders, the people who have invested money in the corporation. The primary agenda of a corporation is to make money for shareholders. generally speaking, most of the shares in most big companies are owned not by individual people, but by capital investment firms and hedge funds. And that's why capitalism is bad. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. One thing that I've always liked about the fandom and about conventions in general is that they've always been very wary of corporate sponsorship. Because to a certain extent, corporate sponsorship makes you beholden to a corporation. Say that a company comes along, let's say Amazon. This would never happen, but let's say Amazon. And Amazon says to your furry convention, okay, so we'll sponsor you. We will give you $10,000 to cover equipment, to cover maintenance costs, whatever you need. We'll give you $10,000, which is pretty stingy on Amazon's part because it can afford a lot more than that. But $10,000, it's an easy to understand number. And in return, they get to put up Amazon corporate branding all around your convention. That's the only thing that they want. They just want to be able to put up, Amazon signs all over the convention. And that seems reasonable, right? They've just given you $10,000. That you're not going to complain about that. The first problem with this is that you have just turned your entire convention space into advertising space. So whenever anyone takes a photograph of a cute fursuit or like some cool stuff that was around the convention center, Amazon's logo is in that. Amazon's logo is in every photograph that's being taken in the convention space. So you are turning your entire convention attendance into advertisers for free, essentially. And there's another problem. So say that someone wears a pup hood in the convention space, very controversial subject, pup hoods, but they wear a pup hood in the convention space. Someone takes a photograph, this makes it online and it goes viral, and Amazon is like, no, stop, back up. We don't like that. Don't do that again. None of that. Don't do that again. We will not pay you $10,000 next year if you let people in pup hoods into your convention. No, we don't like it. We're afraid it'll upset the shareholders. The shareholders are quite panicky. They don't like any idea of our brand being associated with sexual stuff. And now you have a problem because that $10,000 that Amazon gave you is really useful. And you're not going to get it next year if you don't make a change to your convention's acceptable public dress policy. So what do? Do you just say, well, I mean, you can just tell Amazon, well, sod off then. We'll the pup hoods shall run free. But then you're out $10,000. And that sucks. So I think one of the big problems with, if you look at how LGBTQ pride parades have been evolving over the past few years, we've got a lot more corporate sponsors than we used to. And the problem is this kind of dilutes Pride's message, because if you think about it, you've got, I was at Toronto Pride this year, and you had floats for Google and YouTube. It's all very well for Google to say that they're LGBTQ positive, but they are consistently demonetizing LGBTQ channels. They are continuing to allow homophobic and transphobic channels to exist. YouTube is currently being sued by a bunch of LGBTQ YouTubers for consistent discriminatory practices. They consistently demonetize LGBTQ channels. They allow homophobic and transphobic content. Honestly, it's completely hypocritical for YouTube to run pride floats in parades. It's not sincere. I mean, sure, maybe they have benefits for LGBTQ members. That's nice. It doesn't mean anything if you're not willing to stand behind LGBTQ people. If you're not gonna ban the homophobes, if you're not gonna ban the transphobes, if you're not gonna protect LGBTQ people, putting a pride float in Toronto Pride doesn't mean anything. It's just advertising space. There's always the problem of who do corporations donate to politically, and often it's the political party which will bust unions. Unions make it more difficult for corporations to make profit because unions provide collective bargaining power for workers. They make it easier for workers to get health benefits, to get better wages, to get reasonable working hours, and that cuts into a corporation's profit margin. So what do their shareholders want them to do? They want them to get rid of unions. They want them to make unions less powerful. And it just so happens that the political parties that hate unions, well, that's usually the political party that hates gay people as well, that hates trans people, that hates women, that's alarmingly racist. And it doesn't really matter if you're only donating money to them because they'll bust unions. And that's morally reprehensible on its own. But it's also the party that writes bathroom bills, that allows religious discrimination against gay people. The crazy thing is, the furry fandom does not need the sponsorship of outside corporations to be successful. AnthroCon is one of the largest furry conventions on the planet, and it has always refused corporate sponsorship and has publicly stated that it will always refuse corporate sponsorship. For a long time, it was the largest furry convention on the planet. It's done a great deal in turning around public opinion on furries. We don't need the corporations. We're successful enough without them. Moreover, we have our own businesses that we should support first. We have Hyena Agenda, Nomad Complex, Mixed Candy, Rabbit Valley Press. We don't need to support outside corporations by giving them advertising space. We can give that to businesses that are run and operated by furries. I think that's a much better use of our space and time and emotional energy than corporations which really don't give a damn about us. It's important to remember that furries are only interesting to businesses outside the fandom as a source of income. They don't really care about us as people. If they think they can make money off of us, then they'll try to market to us. If they think they can use us to appeal to other people, they will use us in their marketing, but they don't care about us. Honestly, how many furries are there in the world? I'd put it at like maybe 100,000, probably more, but we are not a huge market, and we have particular tastes. You can't really make bank off of furries, not the sort of bank that sort of Fortune 500 shareholders want to see. Oh sure, like you can be successful, you can be financially successful marketing to furries. Tons of businesses have proved that, but you can't be big bucks successful. You can't be billions of dollars successful. And that's the kind of scratch that big corporations want. So if they ever notice us, if they ever pay attention to us, it's because we are somehow useful to them. They don't care about fursuits. They don't care about furries. They don't care about issue 2 of conviction. Even 10 years ago, and some people might not have been in the fandom long enough to remember, media organizations saw us as a joke. They saw us as a punchline. We were something to laugh at. I mean, do you remember the gas attack at Midwest Fur Fest 2014? On actual national news, someone burst out laughing at a gas attack that could have killed people. That was only 5 years ago. It's a slightly sinister thing. But I think that one of the reasons that furries have become slightly more socially acceptable in recent years is because a lot of people have realized how much money furries have. They've realized that we have quite a lot of disposable income. We wear these. These aren't cheap. There's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot and has basically no meaning. Virtue signaling. If you really think about it, the closest thing we have to virtue signaling is corporations taking moral stances on things. Like, Nike standing against racism. I mean, it's good. I would prefer that they stand against racism than stand for it. Nike operates sweatshops in third world countries. They don't really have an immense amount of moral high ground there. They're still treating people from other countries like garbage. It's just that they're doing it for profit rather than outright hate. In general, I think the fandom should be really wary of corporations trying to give us money in return for visibility. If a corporation wants to give furry conventions money with no strings attached, with no obligations, honestly, I don't see very much wrong with that. But if you're putting up branding, if you are becoming a stakeholder, that's something I think furry conventions, the furry community in general, should be very wary of.
Remember, it's important to try and see the issue from all sides to have a more complete understanding of it. We need to work together as a community to support our cons and events first. If corporate sponsorship does become something that our community utilizes, it should only be in a capacity in which it does not take away from our identity and expression. At the end of the day, our community needs to remain a safe space for expression above all else. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe if you aren't already, and leave a comment in the comments section below. Also, if you'd like to support me and my channel, please consider donating to my Patreon. Just $1 a month is worth more than watching all the ads here on my channel. I hope you all have a fabulous day. Goodbye! Shout out to all my amazing patrons for supporting my channel. Starting with the superfans, we have Diana DePry, Wolf Rider, Billy Daxter, L8XL, and Cutter. Next, we have the fan tier with Dan Fox, Nova Halvern, and Solace the Wolf. And finally, we have the early access tier with Scaleth, Shadowfaxy, Tyler Furlong, Tara Linus, Edith Everett, Cockernell, Katie Rose, Runes and Kaz, Husky Heroine, JD Locklead, Mitsakatsa Wild Rose, and Cosmo. In case any of you are interested in becoming a patron, I offer 3 rewards tiers. Early access, which gives you access to videos like these ahead of their release and your name featured in the credits. Fan, which gets you a signed fursuit photo of me, thank you note, and everything from the early access tier. And finally, Superfan, which allows you to have one of your questions asked on Ask Ash, as well as everything from the previous 2 tiers. Beyond all this, I will be revamping my Patreon in the coming months and adding some extra cool prizes and perks tiers, so keep your eyes peeled. Check out my Patreon at patreon.com/ashcoyote. The link is in the description below.